This video is proudly sponsored by Newtype. Tools, accessories, model kits, these guys have it. Hop over to newtypehq.com and use the link below to help this channel out for future builds. Halloween is probably by far my favorite time of the year, where I can reach into my private game selection, play my all-time favorite horror games, or even kick back with a nice big bowl of popcorn with my wife and watch some classic 80s horror films. But the one game that we always came back every year is probably by far and still my all-time favorite sci-fi horror of all time. Welcome back, my dudes and dudettes. Okay, let me cut the crap. Sorry about that. Welcome back, my dudes and dudettes. Another tantalizing, exciting, spooky, scary build from yours truly, Otaku Builder. And if this is your very first time onto this YouTube channel, welcome! So, it has been quite a long time since I've actually built another KITBASH, but I want to do something special for you dudes and dudettes on my favorite holiday, and that is Halloween. Now, what exactly are we going to do for this unique KITBASH? And, well, so happens I have my all-time favorite space horror games, the Dead Space series. And I can't tell you enough, my dudes and dudettes, I absolutely love this franchise. In fact, Dead Space 1 was one of my very first games where I completed 100% getting all the achievements, followed by Dead Space 2, and not as much as Dead Space 3 because it went more action instead of horror, but these two I hold really regard to my heart of my all-time favorite sci-fi space horror video games, particularly Dead Space 1. Now, what we're going to be focusing more of our energy on is Dead Space 1 because I am such a big fan of Isaac Clarke engineering suit, or if you want to be more specific on the terminology for it, I believe it's called the Research Integration Gear, short for RIG. So, what are we going to be using for the actual inner frame for this particular KITBASH? I am going to be rocking out with the RGM-96X Jesta. Now, the reason I want to stick with Jesta is because I don't want to use the head, but I want to use the weapon accessories in the main inner frame to do the whole build. So when it comes to the head, I'm going to be rocking out with the RGM-79G GM Command Colony type mobile suit. The reason for that is because this particular mobile suit has a much more longer neck extension, so I want to utilize that for the Jesta mobile suit main body. As for the GAT-X103 Buster Gundam, I'm going to be utilizing the skirt section so I can build the rig up from scratch, so hopefully it comes out the way I want it. Now when it comes to Isaac Clarke visor, this is where things get kind of challenging because I have no parts to really pull it off. That is until I came across these evergreen plastic pieces. Now these are very flexible and very durable to pull off this effect, but this is probably going to be my first time working with this particular plastic to pull off specific key areas to make this look as cool as it is from the video game. It's definitely going to prove to be a challenge to build, but it's definitely going to be fun. Now, as always, before I get started on this build, I need to focus on my 3 rules to make this project successful. Number 1, no 3D printed pieces. Number 2, dynamic poses. And number 3, modifications. And the modifications are going to be heavily emphasized by putting custom LED lights into specific key areas. So I can honestly tell you that the most challenging part on this build is definitely going to be Isaac Clarke helmet. Now the reason why I say it's going to be difficult is because how am I going to illuminate the actual visor? Now the one thing that's going to be very apparent, one LED light is not going to cut it. I tried experimenting with a Pica LED light, didn't work. I tried putting a chip in a Mega. The Mega was too bright, the chip wasn't illuminated enough. So the LEDs need to be put in a specific angle so that way it illuminates the visor all the way through down. Now when it comes to the visor, I need to mask out the top camera so that way it's blocked out and then cut out the visor completely so that way it doesn't contrast between the light blue and at the same time not contrast with the green. I want it to have to be one centralized color. Now as for the helmet, I'm not going to do any heavy modifications with it. I'm just going to keep it as is because I like the design aesthetic of it. Now if I did cut out the lower jaw section, that would leave that area completely open and you would get tons of light bleed, and that would definitely blow out the chest to the point where it just looks really silly looking. So I'm going to keep that area there the way it is. Now the actual side circles around the head, I'm going to leave that as is too because I want that to be exposed so you can see a little bit of the inner frame. And at the same time, since there's enough plastic around the side part of the head, I want these little plastic pieces to stick out the way I would see it in the video game. Now the challenging part is they need to be the right kind of length, so I'm going to take 3 of these particular plastic pieces and stack them up on one another and use my snippers to cut them down evenly. Double check them, make sure they're done correctly. Of course you can always measure them, but I kind of like to freestyle these things. And then to wrap things up, I want to make sure I have a template already ready to go so that way I can use a ballpoint pen to draw it out the way how I would see it, and then I would actually come up with an X-Acto blade. This process is very stressful, but at the same time, if you do it right, you should have a lot of fun. Alright, now that I got the plates already cut out, it's now time to plan out where I'm going to be putting in the LED lights. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm going to be sticking out with 2 chip LED lights both on the side panels of the middle part of the monocle eye, so that way I can illuminate the visor how it's seen in the video game. Now the glue those into place, I'm going to be rocking out with my good old fashioned Bob Smith Energy Max Cure thick glue, and let that sit and dry for about an hour. Alright, now that the head is literally done, it's now to get this guy prepared, ready for pre-painting. Now, before I get started, I need to construct the main body, and this is when the Jesta becomes very useful. Now, like I mentioned before, Jesta is an excellent candidate when it comes to articulation because it's on this double ball joint system where you can do a nice front to back, side to side bend. It's just absolutely wonderful, but probably there's 2 areas that I overlooked when I bought this model kit. One is the front hatch section where it houses the pilot. Now, since there's not going to be a pilot in there, and that's pretty much going to be strictly there for housing electrical wiring, this front hatch can actually be used upward to where it can be Isaac Clarke HUD, where he gets incoming transmission, or when he's gauging his oxygen, whatever it's there in the game. This is an excellent little bonus that I didn't really look into. Now, the challenging part with this model kit is going to be wire management, and this is like another thing I overlooked. Since there is a great deal of cavity space in the torso area where it's literally designed to house a LED light from Bandai Japan, I'm going to be using this to actually house all electrical wiring, while at the same time create a path where I can send a through and through wire from the top all the way down to the back, so that way it can connect to a male and female connector so it can power the whole entire mobile suit.
Into space in your eyes, touching you feels like ooh.
Alright, now that these pieces are fully done and ready to be painted, it's now time to tackle the second challenging part of this mobile suit, and that is going to be the rig. So like I mentioned earlier on in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the main skirt section to pull off that nice rig section in the main back of the mobile suit. Now, to make this part work, I'm going to be drilling in 4 holes in the main back and then holding that upright with a paper clip so that way I get a nice butterfly angle. And then when it comes to the classic rig illuminated tube, I'm going to be using a side-to-side fiber optic tubing with the chip LED light to illuminate from the top, and that way it can illuminate from it to the bottom. Now, I originally was going to work with 2 chip LED lights, but I thought 1 would be enough. But when it comes to another challenge part, it's going to be the stasis LED light rig. Now, I originally was going to use 2 Pica LED lights to illuminate the stasis rig, but I thought just putting a mega flickering LED light would be just enough of the effect to give a sense that this mobile suit is literally been banged up by fighting a lot of necromorphs, so I want to give the sense that it's like feeling.
I don't mean to speak this up a line, but the way you move is perfect by design. You look just like you fell down from the sky. Yeah.
Okay, my dudes and dudes, this is one part I forgot to mention in the video. So when it comes to the visor, I can't just use a plain clear green plastic piece that's going to heavily blow it out on the camera. So to help diffuse it, I'm going to be using some good old-fashioned tracing paper. Now what the tracing paper is going to actually do, it's going to do two things. One, it's going to desaturate the bright blue LED light to the point where it actually illuminates the visor, but it will actually illuminate all three of the visors all the way down. If I just have just the actual clear plastic there, it's just going to illuminate just the two, and it's going to be heavily blown out on the camera. So with this diffusing method, it actually is going to pull off the effect absolutely beautifully. Alright, now that the main body is absolutely done and looking absolutely beautiful the way how I intended, it's now time to tackle the arms and the legs. Now when it comes to the arms and legs, I'm once again going to be using the Jesta inner frame to pull off this effect, but my biggest concern is going to be the feet. They're a little bit flat, they're a little bit too pointy. I definitely want something bulky and give a sense that it has like a weighting field. And shockingly enough, I actually have some spare runners from my Gundam Age Titus. Now the Titus is actually going to play an important role because the feet itself is actually perfect the way how I envision Isaac Clarke's mecha suit. They're not too sharp, they're not too wide, they have a nice good thickness to them, and at the same time it gives you an excellent range of mobility around the ankle. So putting in dynamic poses is going to be really essential to pull off this look. Alright, we reached another challenging part of this model kit, and that is actually installing an LED light on the foot. So naturally, when it comes to putting LED lights on feet for any kind of mobile suit, it actually proves to be a very great challenge because there isn't a great deal of cavity space around the main cab or the main foot area. So since there is great range of articulation around the foot and around the ankle, and at the same time there's a great decent amount of bend around the main thigh up to the main hip section, putting in an LED light inside the main foot isn't going to be a problem. The challenging part is actually hollowing out that area and putting a fiber optic tubing in there to make the effect look really cool. Just having an actual straight up LED light in there would actually overblowing it on the camera and make it look really awkward. So I'm going to opt out and end up using a fiber optic cable to make that effect look really cool. So as I was getting things ready to install the skirt section, I noticed that I don't want to do a classic skirt in the front and back like you would see in the Jesta, so I want to do like a hybrid between the two. So what I'm basically going to end up doing is going to use parts of the skirt section from the chest to hold it up front, and the pieces from the tightest around that midsection of the skirt, and then glue them together. So that way it looks really good, it's low profile, and it stays consistent with the overall theme. Now this part is going to take a lot of time because I'm going to need to actually glue these pieces together in the front and the back. At the same time, when they're glued into place, they shouldn't cause any problems when it comes to putting this guy in dynamic poses. So the style itself, it stays consistent to the overall look and aesthetic design, and I absolutely love it. All right, now both arms are fully constructed. It's now time to tackle building the one part that I'm absolutely looking forward to building, and that is going to be the plasma cutter. Now to do this, I'm going to be using a two-stage system where I'm going to be using the remaining runners from the Justa's beam rifle to cut out the front and back section of the area and then sand it down to the point where it's nice and smooth. Then, once again, I'm going to be using evergreen scale model plastic pieces like what I use in the visor. So I'm going to be basically just using to construct the yellow pylons on the very front of the actual plasma cutter, and then areas that have like really good surface detail, I'll use remaining runners to make those areas pop out as well. So this process took about 2 days to do it correctly, but make sure you have reference to look back and forth when you're building the plasma cutter, because the design has drastically changed from Dead Space 1 to Dead Space 2. My goodness, I absolutely love doing kit bashes, man. It's such a wonderful way of expressing your creativity, and seeing how this is like my third experience doing another kit bash, it just really encourages me to do more and more, like every 3 to 4 months. Granted, it is an expensive process, but man, there's so many benefits when it comes to doing a custom build, you know. And the reason why I focus my builds on video games, because it's still a part of my life, and I really want to show my love for the Dead Space franchise because it's been really forgotten for a long time, and now that we're literally over the horizon of a remake coming out in a couple of years, I mean, this is a great time than any to do another like kit bash, and why not do it on our all-time favorite quiet protagonist, Isaac Clarke. But the idea for the kit bash was not just it being a mecha version of the engineering suit of Isaac Clarke. It was trying to really go with a theme of like, this is actually like a mobile suit that's on a mining planet or in some kind of refining area moving heavy loads of cargo or ore. So I definitely wanted to embody that like mechanical look of it and not focus too much on how the game model looked from the game, because there's obviously areas that I'm not going to be able to pull off. Like a good example, the rivets that are on the left shoulder, arm, and the tricep and bicep and around the midsection of Isaac's suit, I can easily pull that off. And that is if the mobile suit was static. And that goes against my rule number 2, is I need to put this as in many dynamic poses as possible. So I felt that if I had those rivets there, it would heavily compromise it, and over time it would probably just break off. And the mindset I try to keep in my head is like, there will be a point in time someday where I would love to display these pieces to the public, like at an expo or like a how-to like event, whenever that happens for us. So I always try to future-proof these builds so that way they don't become a problem later down the road. So that's the reason why I opted out not doing it. I know there's purists out there that really will look at that like, oh, you didn't add the rivets on there. I get it. But for time constraints and for durability, it just would become a problem when it came to doing posability. So I opted out for it, but I still retained the look and feel like it was something from the Dead Space universe. So I think I really did a good job on that. Another area that was really fun, oh man, I love doing weathering, and this is probably the dirtiest and probably the most aggressive weathering that I've done on a model kit in a long time, and it's super fun. So I love making the feet slightly dirty, give a sense there's like dirt accumulation on it, but at the same time experimenting doing like blood textures was really kind of fun and kind of risky, but I didn't want to make the texture too bright, too dark. It was really cool experimenting with oil paints and jumping back into working with lacquer based paints. There's like one time where I actually worked with lacquer red to really pull off that iconic splattering effect. So what I'm basically doing is I'm trying to take the actual soft flat tones of the surface and then add a little bit more of a shine to the blood spattering texture. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll see it in this process as the video is wrapped up. It was just such a really exciting process to do. And then probably the most challenging and probably the most satisfying part of this build was doing the visor, and it was just great. And I was very shocked that I was able to pull it off. So yeah, man. Expect to see more kit bashes to come, dudes and dudettes. This was such a wonderful process, and I hope you guys give it a shot. Kit bashing can be a bit expensive, but man, if it's done right, you'll get great results. But as always, thank you dudes and dudettes for watching this video. Do appreciate the likes, comments, and subscribes. And if you guys can do me a favor, give this video a thumbs up. It will help the channel out tremendously. And as always, I will see you dudes and dudettes on the next build. Happy Halloween.